All right, today we're going to be talking about how to spend your time and how to organize things, which is pretty important. Many of you are leaders of leaders, you're directors, you're coaches, you're coordinators, sometimes overseeing whole areas of ministry, so this is pretty critical. I want to start off by talking about how we have spent our time and how we've organized things from when we were just little kids all the way to now. And I think it's going to be revealing perhaps on where we are and what stage maybe you're at. So let's look at kids. Actually, let's start with babies. And we want to ask the question, how do they spend their time and how do they organize things? Okay, so it's pretty absurd, right? We start with babies. They don't organize their things. They don't spend, all they do is just, they want food, right? They cry when they want their diaper changed. So it's absurd. So let's move on to kids. How do they spend their time and how do they organize things? Well, it's usually pretty structured for them. You know, they go to school and so, and they get home from school and they have homework. They might have some playtime in the evenings. So it's pretty structured for them. How they organize things, you know, it can go back and forth. They may, you know, let things kind of get all out of control, and then parents come in and then they, you know, tell them clean your room kind of deal. So let's move on to teens. How do teens spend their time and how they organize things? So now we're dealing with people who are asked to do more things, like have extracurricular activities. They're maybe getting a job for the first time. They're asked to do things in a structured fashion. And so sometimes it's hard for the teenager to begin to do that. They try to, you know, trust it to memory. So how they spend their time, it's still pretty structured. How they organize things, you know, maybe they're not very organized yet at all. But the pressure is definitely mounting on them to begin to have some kind of a calendar, some kind of way of organizing their life. Let's move into young adult. So the young adult now, whether they're in college or they're in their first job, now they're required to show up on time. Now they're required to show up on time to class. Now, you know, if you look at the college student, only part of their time is actually in class. The rest they're actually responsible for doing homework, for writing, for studying, for writing papers, these kinds of things. And so the time becomes a little bit less structured, and it becomes more important for them to begin to take ownership of how they spend their time and how they begin to organize things. The assumption is that they're becoming more responsible for themselves. And then we get to the young professional. Now, if you don't show up on time, you get fired. Now, if you don't get that assignment done for your boss, you could get fired. Now, if your boss asks for something and you don't have it, you lost it, you could get fired. So now it's pretty critical for this person to start learning how to spend their time and how to organize things. It gets even worse. So imagine a young professional who now is married. Not only, you know, are they required to complete things on time, to be organized and things at work, but now, you know, their wife or their husband, you know, is tasking them with things like remembering their anniversary, like a honey-do list, you know, any number of things. So it becomes even more critical. Here's where it gets even more critical. They're a professional, they're married, and now they have kids. It's just mounting and mounting and mounting. So now they have their responsibilities at work. Now they have their responsibilities as a husband or wife. Now they have to remember to take the kids to the doctor, to the dentist, to the soccer practice, to karate, all of these things. And it just mounts and mounts. Then, you know, as you get older, the kids leave, you become retired, and it gets easier. But so one of the things we want to ask ourselves is, where are we at here? So, you know, are you in the workplace but you're still operating with the tools to organize your time and organize your things that you did when you were a teenager, right? So do you have a calendar? Do you have a to-do list? Are you always trying to remember, what do I have to do next? That kind of thing. These things are pretty critical. So in terms of serving at the church, you are now in a position where you're a leader of leaders, right? So you're perhaps building teams. You're training. You are developing leaders. You're recruiting people. You are finding ways to resource them. You're creating printed materials or putting things on a website. You're trying to find ways to care for these leaders, right? Ways to communicate things out to these people. Evaluations. These people want to know how well they're doing, right? So you want to provide that information to them so that they know. Affirmation, just letting them know how well of a job they're doing. So this is so much to think of. You think of all the things we have to think of in our personal life, all the things we have to think of in our work life, and now you've stepped up to volunteer in a capacity at the church where you're asked to keep track of even more. So it becomes ever more critical to be able to do that. One of the things that I have found is absolutely essential in all this is to create a system and use the system. Find a system that gets all of this information, all these inputs of information out of my brain and into a system, and then use the system. Okay, I've provided a handout with this. You should be able to see a PDF on the website that you can read that drills into all the details of this, but I want to highlight a few of the things that I found most critical here. One is maintaining a calendar, okay? So it doesn't matter if you're using an Outlook calendar or an iCal or a Google Calendar, it doesn't matter. To be able to put things on your calendar and even set up reminders so that you may have to set up a reminder a half hour before, you may have to set it up a day before. But the idea is to get it out of your brain into a system and work the system. It reduces the stress. If you get it all in one place, you can rest assured that you can go to that one place and find it. So a calendar. Secondly, a to-do list. And sometimes, if you have a to-do item that is connected with a particular date, then you'll want to put it on your calendar. If you have something that just needs to be done just any time, then you put it on your to-do list. Sometimes information comes to us via email. So you end up having a whole slew of emails that you have to action on, you have to do something about. And so one way I've dealt with that is there's an actual thing in there called a flag, and you can flag the email and then actually use that as a to-do list as well. And if that's too much, you can put it all into one list by taking those out and putting them on the to-do list. One of the things when you're dealing with to-do lists is if it's something, and I got this from David Allen's book, Getting Things Done, and that's in your bibliography on the handout. It's one of my favorite kind of bottom-up methods for personal organization. One of the things he says is if you can do it in 2 minutes or less, then do it. Also, if it's something that takes longer, then it either needs to be put on the calendar if it's time sensitive, or if it's not associated with a particular time or date, then just put it on your to-do list. You want to decide whether or not you need to, if it's actually something you need to do something about. If it's not, you're going to want to file it somewhere. Or is it something you need to delegate? And then you'll want to make sure that you do that. You delegate that out. One of the to-do list things that often come up are things that we delegate, but then we just kind of trust that the person's going to do it and there's no feedback loop. So one of the things I recommend is creating a waiting for list. So when you delegate, then that should go on a separate list of things so you can go revisit that, and you can go check every once in a while in with that person to see how the progress is on that particular item.